everyone. Nice to meet you. Welcome again to DCTV. For any of those who are new, my name is Janelle Suttle, and DCTV is DreamClouds Enterprising Podcast Review. And today we have here Sheila Lopez with us. Welcome, Sheila.
Hi, nice to see you, Janelle. Thank you for having me.
And so for those who do not know, actually, as I'm learning myself, today we're here. Sheila is representing Braven. So today we're going to talk about a bit of who Braven is, what Embrace the Journey means for Sheila and for Braven itself as it is a core value, and many more things as we just get to tap into Sheila's story. And so welcome again to everyone who is viewing. If you guys have not already, please make sure to subscribe, click and like this video, and go and check out some of the other guests that we have on DCTV so far. And as mentioned, our season 1 topic is Embrace the Journey. And so I, much like you guys who are watching today, am pleasured with the first time of meeting Sheila. So we all are going to get to know her background and hear her introduction a little bit more together as we get started. And so Sheila, once again, I just want to thank you so much for joining today. A bit background for the audience on Braven and my connection there. And even for Sheila a bit more so she hears as well. But I am coming from Rutgers University, as many of you guys know, and Braven was an organization that was introduced to me while I was there as, I believe, a junior at Rutgers, and really coming across and being a leadership accelerator program, which was, of course, for me, directly aligned. So much of what you guys even see from DreamClouds as far as the services that I'm offering, and much of even what I'm learning, I will be honest, including Embrace the Journey. A lot of that has been introduced to me while being, a Rutgers student, whether in the business school, and also being a fellow in Braven. And so, of course, coming to DCTV and having this topic as far as Embrace the Journey, I wanted to bring Braven, an organization that has truly impacted my life and has really helped my leadership skills, and even the things that, once again, I talked to a lot of you guys about with DreamClouds. I see that there's a large impact that Braven has made for me. And so I'm happy to just be here with the Braven representative once again, so that you guys get to hear more about Braven and how amazing this program is and who it's tailored for and how you guys may even be able to contribute and get involved, okay? So to get us started, Sheila, once again, welcome. And do you mind introducing yourself to myself, the team, the audience? Let us know who you are and what's your story.
Sure. Well, it's so great hearing your story, Janelle, and I'm so thrilled to hear about the Braven impact, and proud to have you as a Braven Post Accelerator Fellow Path. My name is Sheila Lopez. I live in New York City, but I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey. Like many of our Braven students, I'm a daughter of immigrants who came to the United States searching for that American promise, and really believing deeply in education as the pathway to socioeconomic mobility. I'm also the first in my family to go to college, and my parents ended up starting a business very young that kind of just changed the trajectory for me and my younger brother. And that allowed us to go to some of the best schools for K through 12, colleges, and then even law school. And that sort of journey and that emphasis on education and sort of being just one generation removed from folks that didn't have those choices really informed my professional career, and is a lot why I ended up at Braven. I've been at Braven for almost 10 years. I joined when it was a very small organization, maybe employee number 2 or 3. So I feel very privileged to have been on the ground floor of building something so special. And I was the founding executive director for our Rutgers North program. So it was incredibly meaningful to me, and I felt very privileged to be able to launch in the city where my parents have their business, where I was born, and where I still have so many connections. And from there, I've worn a bunch of different hats. I've definitely embraced the journey professionally. I've had roles on the external affairs team at Braven. I'm actually just ending my stint as Braven's first general counsel, because I do have a law degree, and that came in handy, especially as we grew considerably as an organization from a team of like 10 when I started to a team of 100. So, and now I'll be going back to the external affairs side of the house. But I'm, the relationships I built with our students and volunteers, especially in our Newark, New Jersey program, are still some of the things that get me out of bed in the morning.
Very nice, very nice. So, plenty of things that you said there that I just want to also point out to the audience, as we talk about my story and your story, but something that you guys would be able to notice, and just the demographic of who Braven is and the target audience at hand, right? Working with the minorities and working with the first generation graduate students, right, who are actually going to pursue their degree. And so that is something that I was always passionate about in listening to Braven. And even as I was building DreamClouds, because there was a DreamClouds while I was a Braven fellow. It was the very start of the business, but however, I was growing. And there was that similarity and representation as far as just wanting to be able to give back, to a community who is underrepresented and who is not given as many resources. And so even knowing now, to hear that you've been with Braven for 10 years and to see, I think, even the growth of Braven from when I got started, right, when I was just a student and a fellow, and then now seeing the growth as far as how many universities it's been brought to, right, and now getting back into person, I think, as far as being in New York, it was mainly an online course, I believe. But I have seen that there are in-person programs now going on in New York. I love to see the growth of where it's taken in Spelman and many other universities. And so it sounds like you've been there for much of it, right? And I think that's something that you can relate to as far as our audience here, who mainly, are entrepreneurs majority of the time. And something that you probably were able to see in Braven is just the startup and really having that foundation within a startup and how it gets started, how you have to grow it. To now, there will be plenty of people who understand after this call who Braven is and what are some of the values of Braven, and who we're here to help. And so, as mentioned, I want to tap on some of those Braven core values that are there. And if you can, just reiterate them for us, because today we are talking about embrace the journey, which is a core value of Braven. Once again, something that I was introduced in college, and what embrace the journey means for ourselves and how we use our journey to tell our story and even identify our career for ourselves. And so what you've just done, right, was tell your story and really explain a little bit of the journey that you've been through so far. But I just want to know personally, what does embrace the journey mean to you? And why do you feel it was so important that, Braven made it a core value? And if you'd like, you can even let us know some of the other core values that Braven does have as well.
Sure. So core values are really important to us as an organization, but also, as an individual, they can guide you. And I think values really can kind of keep you going during challenging moments or gray moments where things aren't, clear, and that, when you're really facing a fork in the road. And we do have several core values. Embrace the journey is one of my favorite ones, because, you do really need that core value in order to be an entrepreneur. And I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My parents, again, came to this country without a college degree and really just kind of built a business, a restaurant actually. So, and dabbled in other businesses as well. So embracing the journey was something that was instilled in me very early on, where life is not linear, and you're gonna definitely have challenges and setbacks, but when one door closes, another opens. And I don't say that in a way, I usually hate that expression. But I don't say that in a way that sort of like, just see where life takes you or just have faith. You really do need to manufacture good luck. And you have to sort of put yourself in situations where, that door that closes will open another one, right? You can't just kind of wait and see, or, just sort of sit in your misery. And I think embrace the journey also just means always improving and working hard and really viewing life as a lifelong learner. I love education. I love learning. And I think that really helps, that mindset really helps when you are encountering what our founder Ami says, make your stumbling blocks your stepping stones. And that, I think, is a really, really great expression for you personally and professionally. And one thing about Braven, which I love about Embrace the Journey, is that it's really, we're not going to be an overnight success. We go slow to go fast, and we want to be deliberate. We want to continually improve. But we also want to do it as a team. I think it goes very hand in hand with go together, go further, where you really want to, lean on your community and those around you as part of the journey. And when we started, it was really a research paper that came out of the Aspen Institute, and based on Ami, our founders, growing up on the south side of Chicago, she was seeing that, although she was a similar story to my own and a lot of our students, but she was able to have access to some of the best schools for K-12 and college, but a lot of people in her family just did not, and it made such a difference. And then when she was at Teach for America, both as a core member teaching in the classroom, but then also leading the human capital team there, she was seeing that, even those with a college degree and a very strong BA were coming up against obstacles when they were transitioning from college to career. So her personal and professional background really informed the Braven mission that the next generation of leaders should emerge from everywhere and should be as diverse as our nation is. But that there were sort of these challenges, one of them being social capital and who other one just being opportunities to fail safely and have those experiences that can propel you. But we just had an idea and we had to go out and sell it and also figure out how to prove it. Right. So we piloted it a bunch in the beginning, and that was like throwing a bunch of stuff on the wall to see what would stick. And we finally came up on our model where we would partner with universities and higher ed partners to run a credit bearing course. But it wasn't overnight. It took a lot of iterations. And you sort of have to be patient and listen to your heart and your head to see, where it should go next.
Right. Absolutely. And you reminded me, because I actually remember that season where before getting into Braven, before I was a fellow, where it wasn't a course in schools. You weren't getting credits for it, right? It was a complete volunteer experience, coming there really for someone else's or someone's own ambition, right? And care for personal and professional development. And so it was really outside of class hours, taking on that extra work. But I really love the idea of when Braven did make it a course. I think it made it a little bit more mutually beneficial for the students. They started to, maybe plenty of them taking it as a course for credits, but then getting there and seeing the importance and the value. And I think that was a large game changer for Braven, because it kind of gave it a bit more room to show its value and to show its importance. And, many people might not have realized. I realized why I wanted to be in Braven. And believe it or not, it was one of my suite mates in college who first did it during the program when it was not a course. And by the next semester, it became a course. And me and the rest of my roommates, 2 others, actually then joined because it was sold to us as, something that was well worth it. And as you said, you mentioned 2 great things that I really liked. One was being your stumbling blocks, being your next stepping stones. But you also mentioned that Braven was a space where you were giving people a safe space to fail, right? And so those 2 things, though, that, as you mentioned, stumbling blocks and having a space to fail safely really lets you still know that, failure, mistakes, things of that essence are inevitable, right? They're going to happen. And I think that was a big part of what Embrace the Journey means, because you do realize, the further you go in your journey, that there are some things, that you won't be able to dodge. As far as failing, it really is a part of the journey. And then also realizing, as you know, or as you mentioned, those closed doors, which I'm a firm believer in as well, that our steps are ordered, and that closed doors just means there's another open door for you elsewhere that you want to look into and move on. And so, once again, really getting into the failures at hand. And I'm sure even for Braven, having to make many of the mistakes and go through the ups and downs until you guys have reached this point. And even still, when it takes growth and innovation to continue to stay relevant and continue to make an impact in the community, those are things that, as you mentioned, it was not overnight success, but all things that take place within the journey. So those were really great points, as mentioned, just the stumbling blocks turning into stepping stones. And then also, once again, having that safe space to fail, which is very encouraging for a lot of people when you hear that coming from Braven, because you know that, as you mentioned, together you're going further. And so with that being said, having that strong community to back you up and really support you and let you or allow you to make certain mistakes or certain learning lessons, something that hopefully one you can enjoy, but you go through with others, so it really does come back to you and say, okay, you don't feel bad about it, right? You can embrace the journey a little bit more because you realize that there are plenty of others who are in your position that are also moving. And so these were some great things that I loved about Braven that I'm glad you mentioned, so that the community really does understand, the impact of what it's doing for many students who may have not realized they had a chance, in society. And so there are so many organizations now who are starting to give back to minority communities and underrepresented communities so that they do feel as though they have the same chance as many others, which were not given, a few decades ago or so. And so what would you say are some of the most important lessons you've learned through your journey, right? So we've heard a little bit more about you. You're even going to school for law, and it sounds like eventually, I don't know if you planned it that way, but eventually there was alignment throughout your career, growing up in an entrepreneurial family, right? And so now getting to Braven and really kind of being there in the beginning stages, so almost feeling like an entrepreneur, I would say, because of the growth and the buildup that you had to take Braven through. And so I'm sure there's much more throughout your journey that we have not fully discussed yet. But as you do look back, and as you do embrace your journey thus far, what would you say are some of the most important lessons that you've gained from it?
My search headphones. No problem. Thank you. Yeah, I think that when I graduated from college, I did not know what I wanted to do, nor did I have a strong first job secured. So Raven very much spoke to me there. I was always a strong student in the classroom, and I kind of just thought that the next step would just materialize, right? Somehow fall from thin air. I'm not really sure, but I had not planned out my 10-year path or anything like that, nor 5-year or 2-year path. So I think it was a real wake-up call to have graduated with a BA and a strong academic foundation, but really not knowing where to go next, and getting rejection, like getting rejected from, I thought I wanted to go into journalism, actually, which is a very tough career to break into. I just I would apply. We used to send out hard copies of resumes back then, even, but I would never hear back, and that was very humbling and discouraging. And when I did hear back, I rarely made it past the first or second round of interviews. So I think that was tough, and I ended up taking an unpaid internship, which is not everyone can pull that off. And I hope that people do pay their interns now and going forward. But and that internship gave me the space just to be able to continue to apply to other places. And I ended up applying for a role for the New York City Council's Education Committee Chair, Eva Moskowitz. So because of this interest and passion for education and wanting to sort of pay it forward, I sort of gravitated to this role that was an education policy analyst, looking at public schools in New York City and working for this woman who was really providing a lot of oversight and really holding, I think, the Department of Education's feet to the fire in some ways, and making sure that the city's almost, I think, 1.3 million public school kids were getting access to a quality education. And to this woman, my story and I guess my setbacks were assets. And it was sort of the first time that I was seeing my personal story, being first in my family to go to college, just feeling very motivated by the lever that education can be socioeconomically. I ended up really impressing her, and that was who I worked for until I went to law school. I worked for her on her policy staff, and then I worked on her campaign for Manhattan Borough President. And then she ended up losing another setback and challenge that was disappointing. She ran for Manhattan Borough President, lost, but out of that came Success Academy Charter School, which is now the largest charter school management organization in New York City. It's about 50 schools in the network and about, I think, 20,000 students. So I was able to work on a project that I just is still one of the most rewarding professional experiences I've had because of these setbacks, both my own and then this woman's. Her losing the campaign for or the race for Manhattan Borough President. So it happens at all levels, at all. Even with people who've had a lot of wins under their belt, a setback can really turn into a huge win for you. So, even early on in my career, I had a lot of friends who were going to investment banks and consulting firms right out of college. They had lined up all their internships, and I was just kind of a little bit more lost and confused, I would say, and not knowing where to go. And then I ended up going to law school. The sort of immigrant daughter in me was, you have to get to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I sort of leaned toward the law side because I was good at research and writing. So I'm not good at looking at blood. But I went to law school, and that was also another humbling experience, being surrounded by incredibly smart people who, my imposter syndrome was sort of at its all-time high then, where I thought everyone knew everything and was better prepared. And, I was the only person struggling to finish my reading, to figure out what was going on in class. So, at every step of the way, you really do, I think, realize that, life is hard, but you're not the only one, even though it feels like you are the only person struggling or confused or not knowing what's going on. I think law school was really rigorous, but it was still, I think, a really good learning opportunity for me. And then, I was able to secure a job in the private sector, working for a big law firm right after law school, where I was able to, I think, really learn the ropes and work, in an environment with very high standards, a lot of, a big premium on client services, and making sure that, you were available 24/7 to deliver on that. I worked on the capital markets side and investment management side with some of the big financial institutions, and put in my time and I need some money. And I think after 3 years, I just realized it wasn't for me. I wanted to build something from the ground up. I wanted something that was more mission aligned. And I got connected to Ami after, again, sort of building. I think this is one of your learning labs, is when you really have to network like a pro. And I kind of built a spreadsheet of everyone I knew and how they would help me get my next job, and kind of went from there. But it was a hustle. And again, very humbling to be oh, I have a BA, I have a JD, I've worked at, a big corporate law firm, and I'm still struggling to figure out what my next move is going to be. But that it's hard work all along, all the way. And I got connected to Ami through someone I had known earlier in my career. But funnily enough, and I share this with students all the time, this woman who I thought was a mentor to me. I only met her a few times in person, but she was someone who's very busy, was running a large nonprofit herself, and had a JD and an MBA. I kept emailing her to set up time to meet or to talk or do anything, and she wasn't responding to my emails. And I was like, oh my gosh, she hates me, or why is she ignoring me? And I would like send these emails out, being, like it's subject matter, like the line being like, 20 minutes of your time, or like reconnecting, or, and then I was like, wow, months went by, and I'm like, I know this is the person who's going to get me my next job. I just know it. She's super connected. She's not responding to my emails. And then I found out through another friend that she was going to be at this event. So I show up at this event knowing that this person is going to be there, and I'm ready with my pitch. And, I go to her and I'm like, Iris, it's Sheila. And she's like, hi, how are you? It's been so long. Like, what are you up to? And I'm like, I've been trying to email you. And she's like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. I'm between roles or organizations. And it really wasn't about me at all. It was where she was at that point in her career. And sometimes things just fall through the cracks. Don't make it about you. She ended up connecting me to Ami. She was on the Braven startup team, actually, and she really, like, what I was right. She was the person who was going to get me my next strong first job, or my strong job. And you sort of don't take it personally and don't give up. I like showed up physically somewhere where I knew she was going to be. I had my pitch ready for her, and then I followed up right after we reconnected, and we had breakfast, and kind of the rest is history. But I didn't let my ego get in the way. She forgot who I am. I didn't make an impression. I guess my main feedback is, when someone doesn't answer you, or you feel like you get a no, just keep going. No means no now, not forever. It's what we like to say. We had a lot of no's at the beginning, and we will continue to get no's in the future at Braven. But in the beginning, it was definitely an uphill battle to convince people that even if student is in college, even if they're on track to earn that hard-won, BA, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to get a strong first job. There are other things like social capital and important experiences and internship pathways that are required to get there. And without that strong first job, the American promise doesn't come true. I think you really need to believe in yourself and in your mission in order to keep going, and to definitely lean on those around you who do believe in you when you're sort of doubting yourself. But I tell my former students that story all the time, because I'm just like, you can't let rejection get you down at any point in your career or your life, whether you're 15 or you're 50.
Right. Absolutely. And it's a great lesson to learn, as early as possible, because for many of us, if not all, I think we all at some season of our life go through imposter syndrome when it comes down to a transition and a pivot and trying to get into the next step. And because of rejection, we all do get to that place where it's like, oh my gosh, even when we think, hey, here I am, highly qualified, overqualified, whatever the case may be. And then we hear some no's, and it's like, okay, then maybe, I'm not who I think I am, or vice versa. Sometimes it's being put in positions where you never thought you were going to be. And you're happy about being somewhere new, but then also realizing to yourself sometimes, like, hey, how did I get here? And will I be able to succeed while I'm here? And so that fear of rejection really is, a large, I would say, stumbling block, right? As you can see, or a setback, as you've mentioned as well, where it comes down to it. And it's all on how we actually respond. There's this quote I was just sending to some of my fellows in my cohort the other day through another program. And I just talked about that, and how, life is really only about 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we respond. And even in those situations, right, we still look at it and say, rejection comes. And for many of us, we hold on to that in our responses to kind of build walls and create a fear. But the goal is that we all begin to learn how we can, as you said, use those setbacks, really use, there's also a phrase where it says rejection is not rejection. It's really just repositioning. And eventually we all begin to learn it's on our mindset on how we decide to look at some of these things in life. And do we decide to look at it as rejection and that we're not qualified for something and then embrace that imposter syndrome? Or do we then, transition our minds and take some pivots and saying, okay, it wasn't rejection, it's repositioning. And, whatever door is supposed to be open for me will be open. So really having to say, I'm not going to let that impact me. And I love how you continue to be persistent, right? So the persistence and the hustle that was in you really did go a long way, and it got you to exactly where you wanted to be. So you did use those stumbling blocks as stepping stones, and realize that these setbacks were really just setting you up for something much greater, and aligning yourself to exactly where it is you need to be. And something else that I just was considering as listening to your story, and this is actually a core value of DreamClouds, which is vision, right? And so the three core values of DreamClouds is love, vision, and pursuit. And of course, we always talk about that love and that passion that drives you to something, that allows you to stay committed to something and continue to push. But there are days where sometimes the passion can die because of the circumstances, the rejection, whatever may come into play. And then we realize the value of vision, right? And so we always discuss here in DreamClouds, there's sight and there's vision, and what's the difference between the two of those. And vision is, looking ahead. I like how my sister likes to put it, but in a way she goes, sight is what you can see with your eyes open. Vision is what you see with your eyes closed. Even when your eyes are closed, can you still see ahead and realize, what it is that you're working towards? And I think through a lot of hearing your story, something that we can point out, is that importance of having a vision. I'm sure for many of the programs you talk about, coming out of law school, right, and getting your first internship / position, and not only taking your setbacks, but realizing the setbacks of those who you with, and how that even kind of put you into a new position, but also having to realize, what was the end goal and what were you pushing to? And you didn't allow those setbacks to stop you there, but you continue to push. And even through the next transition, right, as you got into Braven, and as you continue to hear some no's and closed doors, but still pushed for it. And so what would you say, is the value of vision as you try to embrace the journey, and as you do go through the ups and the downs and even the rejections? How is that vision important in the journey so that you continue to stay as persistent as you were throughout your story?
Yeah. I think vision is key, as you say, that it really is like your core values, something that will guide you no matter what. And when you do have setbacks or those days when you you're not feeling the hustle, it will continue to guide you. Otherwise, what you're working on just kind of feels like you're phoning it in. It's very easy. So you really do need the vision and the mission. And I do think that's why to be an entrepreneur and to join a scrappy startup, you really do need to have that big bold vision, which Ami, to her credit, had that dream, and not only had the dream, was able to convince others to come along for the ride. And I signed up right away. I was like, yes, please. So it's either your vision or passion for and deep faith in someone else's vision. But I think that's what you need in order to get you in, day in, day out of your job, and also what can keep you going. And I think that can come in the form of core values, a professional vision, a personal vision. I think it can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, but you really do need to kind of like that big picture set of principles to inform your, like how you show up as a person at home and at the office. Right. So I think that's, I think that's really important. And, if you are the founder, you got to sell others on that. So you have to be really good to be able to sort of, make sure people can have, have that buy-in. So I do think, vision is really important. And, what you're hoping to get into, how to inspire, you have to inspire yourself, before you inspire others.
Absolutely. Very, very true. You have to have that self-motivation within you, a little bit of that encouragement. You do have to have the confidence to keep the vision alive, to continue to pursue on that. I think even more so, especially when you are contributing to someone else's vision, because you guys may not always see it the same, right? And the beliefs may not always align. And so it does even add another obstacle at times when you're working with the team and you need everyone who's there to kind of still be on board with the vision, even while, disappointment comes. And as you said, the no's come, the rejections come. There's plenty of things that will come. The obstacles are once again inevitable. And so having everyone still be aligned in that vision can be a challenge in and of itself, but it is important. And the more I think the further you go within the journey and the more lessons that come with it, even throughout the disappointments, you do begin to, still embrace the journey and realize, hey, okay, because of the vision, because of the end goal, and that belief that you have in that vision, right? So keeping the belief strong, keeping the faith there in that vision is just as important. It's one thing to have the vision, and we always say even put it out, whether it's on your vision board, whether it's written in your business plan or whatever, but without having that strong belief in it, without having that faith in it, you then do see that it's still a challenge to be able to keep the vision alive and continue to push. And so for the audience, I just wanted to ask you, how do you overcome disappointment and or any unexpected change when it comes to your career plans?
Yes, I think one is, give yourself moments of grace. That you did what you could. You left it all out on the field. So I think even before the disappointment, I think, get trained. If you give it your all, and under those circumstances, I think, it's a lot easier to then forgive yourself or give yourself grace or understanding if you do fail, if there is disappointment or setback. I know a lot of us are super tough on ourselves, and I think that's been one of the hardest things for me to learn personally, is how to deal with failure, especially when you feel like, it came at it was in your own hands or within your control. And then I think the other important mindset to have is to know that you're a lifelong learner, right? That without those moments of growth, you're not going to get better. And that to really embrace disappointment as an opportunity. And I think, kind of treat yourself the way you would treat a friend or a colleague, and put on a problem solving hat. Like, okay, this is what happened. How do we solve it? And try to, detach yourself from that. So I think it's always important to have a community around you, like a cabinet of advisors. They don't have to be, people who are senior to you or further along in your career. They can be people who are your peers, people that you mentor, but folks can really, I think, support you when you're facing a setback or a disappointment or a challenge, to be, help you kind of put on your problem solving hat and say, how do I make this stepping stone? How do I make the stumbling block my stepping stone? So I, like I said before, I don't like to sort of wait and see or say, oh, just have faith or, things will get better. You really do need to manufacture that good luck and those opportunities. So give yourself some grace, eat some ice cream, do whatever you have to do to feel better. Then I would say, move on and approach it like you would be like solving, a problem, and think of it as like a challenge that you would solve for somebody else. Right. Or a learning moment, just like what we tell our fellows. So, but I do think you do need to hustle and work hard. Like, just life is tough.
Absolutely. And I like how you mentioned that, because I think that's something, that a lot of us can realize, and yet it's still always harder to approach and resolve. But it's like, what is the big deal, where it comes down to others, the ones you love, your friends, your family, and something happens to them, and you can always still see the brighter side of the situation, just what to say, just the kind of advice to give, and moving in that grace. And then when you're on that end, it's always like, for many of us, we do tend to beat ourselves up, and kind of just shut ourselves down and not be able to create the same solutions that we create for others. And I think that's a big learning lesson that many of us have to still kind of embrace in, is how do we take ourselves a little bit out of that situation, or at least take our emotions from it, I think that goes back to even just what was mentioned before, that things happen and that's only a small percentage of life, but the larger percentage is really how you respond to it. And I think the sooner we even get to realize that, we may want to move with grace within ourselves, right? And respond a little bit differently, and try to practice, hey, how can I respond to myself and my circumstances and my situations the same way I am when I'm responding to those who I love, my friends, my family. Maybe it's even coworkers or, people that you're just around. Plenty of us can be mentors. And it's where's that same grace I give, my mentees to give to myself. And so those are really great point. And I think that it's a challenging thing for people to work on, but it's something that's very important for us to work on, because when we do start to gain a skill, and it really is a skill, when you learn how to help respond in a healthy way to disappointment and to rejection, it's not something that's easy for, I think, anyone to do, which makes it a skill really at the end of the day, because it's something that can be crafted for many of us, however, and something that can be learned for many of us. Right. Great. And so, I actually just wanted to end. We are going to come out ending soon. And then you can, of course, give any information about Braven and how they can get connected with you, how they can get connected and support the Braven community. However, there is one thing that I usually start with this. I know this is Braven tradition, and I like to take it with me many places. But we do the exercise of roses and thorns. I think that is one of my favorite exercises that Braven has put into my life, talking about a rose within the week or a thorn within the week as we gather together. But I actually am not going to say a lot larger of a view, not considering just your week, but considering your career, your life at hand, the journey that you've gone through thus far. I would, and if you can actually even explain for the audience, roses and thorns, the concept behind it and how Braven has used it as an impact for the organization. But then once you do explain it, if you can also explain, what would you say is a rose within your journey so far, thinking about your career? And then also, what's a thorn? And what kind of lesson have you learned from that thorn? Or how do you, try to not look at it as a thorn as you go throughout the rest of your journey, and you improve on it?
Sure. People love roses and thorns. I think it's probably our most popular ritual at Braven. So it's really just a way of building community and trust within a group of people, but you share for that week or that day or, a longer period of time, your rose, like something that has gone well, something that, it's, you look at it and it's beautiful and it's pleasant. And a thorn, which is part of a rose, it's necessary to protect the rose, right? But it's something that's been challenging or prickly or frustrating for you. And life every day, you're going to have both roses and thorns. And so I think it's a wonderful way to open up learning lab and also just to really get to know one another and realize that everyone has some of both, right? Sometimes you're going to have more roses than thorns. Sometimes it's going to fall the other way. So for me, a big rose has just been being able to work on two amazing projects that really do empower the next generation of leaders from all backgrounds. One being Success Academy, which was a K-12 organization that is the largest charter management organization in New York City that works with predominantly students of color from low-income backgrounds, helping them get to the doors of college. And then more recently, in the last 10 years, is Braven, an organization that's near and dear to my heart, and that empowers students who have done everything right to get to the doors of college to make sure that they get a strong first job that they need to fulfill the American promise and really change their trajectory and that of their communities. So it's been, a privilege to meet students like you with so much talent and hustle and also charm and see them, take the program and grow and then give back. So I would say, and then, working with a great team behind the scenes as well, to know that you can be really smart and kind and hardworking and work on something that is mission aligned with vision and purpose. A thorn is harder. I think there are thorns every day. There's that back to out, good question. I think in retrospect, it's not so much a thorn, but I always think of, what if I get into that mindset a lot and trip myself up with, what if I had taken that road instead? Sometimes I do wonder if I should have gotten an MBA instead of a law degree. I think it might have been better suited to the way I operate. And I still think about going back to school all the time, and then I chicken out, to be honest. It's something that, when someone is, considering going back to school, and I'm always like, oh, maybe don't go to law school, maybe get an MBA instead. So it's, or when my PowerPoint skills or Excel skills are lacking, I'm just like, oh, I should have gotten that MBA. So there's still time, I guess, but so it's something, I think about quite a bit.
Very nice. Well, thank you for explaining that, Roses and Thorns. As you said, it's never too late to go back, as you know that. And so it may seem like a thorn now just because of the feeling of, oh man, but it was a rose, right? In the season that you got your law degree, it definitely was something to consider a rose. And so, as you mentioned, sometimes there are more roses than thorns, sometimes more thorns than roses. But I think that goes down to the end of the topic, right? Really saying, embrace the journey. Because you will get both in life, in everything that you do, your career journey or your personal journey, building relationships, even your personal development journey, right? And just building yourself up. There will always be those roses and thorns. And so I was just, as mentioned, I'm really happy that you can explain that, because that is something, it's a great exercise that I like to bring often to plenty of the other groups that I'm working with. Even if you call it differently than a rose and a thorn. I mean, with one group that I'm working with now, it's the highs, the lows, and the buffaloes. So you're high, you're low, and what's in the middle, right? That you really don't know what to consider a high or a low. So we just call it a buffalo. But it's so important to reflect on those things, right? And really kind of just go through, whether it's your week or your day or your career journey in general. What do we take out of it? What are we still so super happy and passionate about? And then what are the things that we're not so ecstatic about, and how we can even use this and utilize that and view it differently when it comes down to our journey. And so thank you once again, Sheila, for joining this call.
Thank you.
Really do appreciate you coming in and just being a representative of Braven. I'm just so excited and grateful that I even have this opportunity to spread, just more knowledge on who Braven is, the impact that it's making in the community. If, those who have not known it yet may even realize and have seen it through other articles and LinkedIn as being one of the greatest places, right, to work in, and which is an amazing accomplishment considering the growth and the newness still of Braven. And so it may not be the startup, but it's still at its point of, making its way around the world and really being known to a larger extent. And so the large accomplishments that it has made so far is just super impressive. It's been amazing watching and even being able to contribute to it. And so as we enter out of our call, is there any information of yours that you'd like to give for the audience who would like to continue to connect with you and or Braven? And once again, just reiterating any information on how those who are interested can support Braven or also get involved, and hopefully for our college students, be on the lookout for Braven if they are not already familiar with it so far.
Yeah, thank you, Janelle. Thank you. I'm so proud and privileged to know you and to know you better now. Our paths fuel everything. But if you don't know about Braven, please check out our website, bebraven.org. And I would say volunteer. Volunteers, Janelle not only is a fellow, but someone who's a leadership coach. And nothing warms my heart more than seeing our former students come back and pay it forward and lead to make sure that others have the opportunities that they deserve. So we are always looking for volunteers. That's where the magic comes in, and that's who brings it. So please sign up to be a leadership coach, professional mentor, a mock interviewer, or if you're at a company that's interested in partnering, let us know. And if you're at one of our schools, I suggest take Braven. It is now a secondary course. And I'm sorry for the fellows that came before you for whom it was not. They worked very hard to make it one.
Yes.
So thanks to them, to your friend. But yes, check out the Be Braven website, and we're actually releasing our jobs report in the next couple of weeks, so you can check out more about our impact, our mission, and read about our amazing fellows like Janelle.
Well, thank you so much once again. So highly encourage you all, as you've watched this episode, to, as she's mentioned, contribute, which, you know, for many of us, volunteering, that is a large contribution, right? There's sometimes no greater contribution. We always look at contribution as just money, but as we know, time is money. So giving our time to this organization is a very valuable thing. Consider it wealth building for the community, right? For those who need it. And so there are plenty of opportunities and plenty of different ways that you can get involved. As mentioned, bebraven.org to check it out, which the information will be listed in the bio as you look down through our description. So as mentioned, please make sure that you support. You go out, you find them on Instagram, you find them on the website, on LinkedIn, and so much more. And continue to push our students who are in this community, right? That we want to see the next generation of leaders. And so we're happy to be a contribution to that. So thank you once again, Dreamers, as you've come on today's call. Highly encouraged that once again, you give more information to Braven and see what it's about, but also, of course, looking into DreamClouds. If this is your first time watching, you can get more information about DreamClouds on our website, www.dreamcloudsent.com. You can also find myself on LinkedIn, Janelle Subtle, and DreamClouds on LinkedIn, DreamClouds Enterprise, and also Instagram at DreamCloudsENT. So for those who do not know, stay involved, continue to be alerted by clicking the subscribe button and turning on your notifications to hear more of DCTV. But it's been a pleasure to hear and speak with you all on today. And until next time, this is for the Dreamers. Thank you all and have a great one.